The biting Montana wind whipped through the small Dillon trailer, rattling the windows as Hank Callahan fought another hacking cough. He dabbed at the flecks of blood, staining his handkerchief, quickly tucking it away before his twin sons. Cody and Jesse bounded into the living room at 58, a retired sergeant haunted by the ghosts of Iraq. Hank knew his lungs were giving out, but the boys, their future mattered more than his fading health. Cody and Jesse, 17, and brimming with ambition, dreamed of attending the prestigious Blackwood Military Academy in Bozeman. They talked of it with an almost religious fervor, their eyes shining with a light he hadn't seen in years. That night, after the twins were asleep, Hank's gaze lingered on the medals hanging above the worn-out recliner. The silver star, the bronze star, the purple heart, each a testament to battles fought but he's lost, and a piece of himself left behind in the desert. Before dawn painted the Montana sky, his decision hardened, at the dusty Big Sky pawn on the outskirts of town. Old Jeb. The pawnbroker's eyes widened as Hank laid the velvet box on the counter. "These? Real Hank?" Jeb asked reverently, lifting the silver star. "Real as the Montana sky." "Jeb," Hank rasped, "the money, it would cover the academy fees, maybe leave a little something for emergencies." What Cody and Jesse didn't know was that their father's greatest act of courage wasn't on a battlefield. It was happening in that small-town pawnshop where he traded his decorated past for their future. The medals vanished from the trailer's wall, leaving faded squares against the peeling wallpaper. They weren't just decorations. They were chapters of his life, etched in brass, silver, and sacrifice. The setting sun cast long shadows across the worn linoleum, and Hank ran a calloused hand over his thinning hair, settling deeper into his chair. His body ached with the memory of mortars and sandstorms. Outside, the quiet rhythm of Ennis, Montana, continued oblivious to the war being waged in the old soldier's heart. "Dad, we're back." Twin voices echoed from the doorway, followed by the thud of backpacks hitting the floor. Hank straightened his lined face, lighting up. No matter how weary he felt, his sons always brought a spark back into the room. Cody and Jesse Callahan, mirror images with their rugged good looks, and the same fire in their eyes, stood grinning in the doorway. But those that knew them could easily tell them apart. Cody, always serious, stood ramrod straight, his gaze direct. Jesse, the mischievous one, bounced on the balls of his feet, his eyes scanning the room for something new. "Coach said I aced the shooting range," Jesse announced, sprawling on the couch, Cody always. The straight man leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "He also said you nearly shot your foot off showing off." Jesse waved him off. "Dad, the Blackwood recruiter came today." Lieutenant Evans' man was covered in medals. Looked like a walking army surplus store. Hank chuckled, a hollow sound. "Oh yeah," Cody added, his voice measured, but laced with excitement. "He said we both had what it takes." Hank's smile felt strained. Blackwood. It was prestigious and impossibly expensive. "That's the one up by Bozeman, right?" "Yeah," the twins said in unison. "They have the best leadership program in the state," Cody continued. "And if we ace the exam, we're practically guaranteed a spot." Jesse jumped in. "And Lieutenant Evans mentioned a prep program this summer, said it would give us a real edge." He exchanged a look with his brother. "The application fee, the program, it's pretty steep, Dad." Cody finished, worry creasing his brow. Hank nodded, slowly, his mind calculating his disability checks barely covered the bills. The trailer's roof leaked. His truck was held together with rust and hope. "We'll figure it out," he finally said, his voice firm. "Your futures come first." Later, after the boys had turned in, Hank retrieved an old VHS tape from the back of the closet. He popped it into the ancient player, watching grainy footage flicker to life on the small TV. Young men in desert fatigues laughed and horsed around, unaware of what awaited them. A younger Hank appeared on screen, his arm slung around another soldier. "Here's Callahan. Our resident mule, a voice narrated from behind the camera, just dragged Jackson out of the line of fire and won't shut up about it. The younger Hank grinned and gave the camera the finger. Someone's got to keep you alive. The current Hank watched silently, his fingers tracing the outline of where the Silver Star used to be. That mission cost them. Jackson, anyway, along with 2 others. The medal came later, along with the nightmares. A coughing fit seized him, and he pulled his hand away from his mouth, seeing the familiar blood. The VA doctor had been blunt. His neglected bronchitis was worsening, becoming something more serious. Tests were needed. Hank had nodded, taken the referral slip, and promptly stuffed it in his glove compartment. The boys came first. Always. Mr. Callahan, with your current income. The bank employee, a young woman with pity in her eyes, slid the loan application back across the desk. Her gaze flickered to the folder where his discharge papers were visible. Thank you for your service, sir. But this is business. Hank nodded stiffly, gathering his papers. He'd expected this. 2 banks, same answer. Outside, he sat in his truck, staring at the application forms for Blackwood. The summer program was exorbitant. The fees, uniforms. His eyes drifted to the glove compartment where the referral lay ignored. Another cough racked him, leaving a metallic taste in his mouth. That evening he watched his sons at the dinner table, heads bent over brochures from the academy. They were good boys, strong, smart, and most importantly, they had each other. Whatever they faced, they wouldn't face it alone. Dad, you okay? Cody asked, his observant eyes catching something in Hank's expression. Just proud, Hank answered, forcing a smile. You boys are going places. I never could. The next morning, after the twins left for school, Hank carefully removed each medal from the wall. The silver star, the bronze star, the purple heart, each nestled gently in the velvet-lined box. His fingers lingered on the silver star, the citation coming back to him, for gallantry in action under fire. They didn't mention the fear. The shaking hands as he dragged Jackson to cover the bullets kicking up dirt. How Jackson had died anyway, whispering his wife's name. Hank closed the box with a decisive click. At Big Sky, pawn. Jeb simply raised an eyebrow as Hank placed the box on the counter. You sure about this, Hank? Hank's jaw tightened. How much? Jeb named a figure fair more than fair, but less than Hank needed for both boys. After some haggling and the addition of his grandfather's pocket watch, they settled on a number that would cover the costs with a small cushion. I'll keep them safe, Jeb promised as Hank turned to leave. If you ever want to buy them back. Hank nodded without turning around. They both knew he wouldn't be back, knew he. That night, he spun the twins a tale about a veterans fund that supported children of soldiers. Their faces lit up with excitement. See, I told you it would work out, Jesse exclaimed, punching his brother's arm. When can we apply? Cody asked, always focused. Already sent the checks, Hank answered. You boys just focus on being ready. The next few weeks were a blur of preparations. Hank helped them study, driving them to physical training, beaming as they outpaced the other applicants. On the morning of their departure at the bus depot, Hank straightened Cody's collar. You've got everything? Yes, sir, Cody answered, standing at attention, though his voice wavered. Jesse, less composed, wrapped his arms around Hank in a hug. We'll make you proud. Dad, you already have, Hank said, his voice thick. Now listen, you two stick together. Cody, stop overthinking everything. Jesse, start thinking before you act. And both of you remember being a soldier isn't about the medals. It's about the people standing next to you. Yes, sir, they answered in unison, squared shoulders. As the bus pulled away, Hank stood at attention, raising his hand in a perfect salute. He held it until the bus disappeared around the corner, carrying his heart with it. The trailer was eerily silent that night. Hank sat in his chair, staring at the empty spaces on the wall. Ghosts of honor traded for something more valuable. "Fly higher than I ever could," he whispered to the empty room before another coughing fit bent him double. Worse than before. 5 years passed like sand through his fingers, impossible to hold. Captain Cody Callahan stood in the sweltering Afghan heat, his face an impassive mask as the general pinned another commendation to his chest. At 22, he was one of the youngest Special Forces team leaders in the regiment, respected for his tactical precision. Cody's thoughts drifted to his brother. 4 years of silence, now the longest they'd ever gone, 4,000 miles away. Lieutenant Jesse Callahan sat in a dimly lit intelligence center, his fingers flying across the keyboard, isolating patterns. Army intelligence had recruited him directly after Blackwood Callahan. His commanding officer called briefing in 10. Jesse nodded, but his attention had snagged on something else, a file reference that matched a pattern he'd been tracking. Something about a contractor called North Star Security and a village that shouldn't exist according to official records. The twins had diverged after the academy. Cody embraced the chain of command, finding solace in its structure. Jesse questioned everything, his mind constantly probing for inconsistencies, for the truth beneath the surface. The breaking point came during a joint mission 8 months prior. "Hold your position, Lieutenant." Cody's voice crackled over the radio, tight with controlled tension. Jesse crouched behind a crumbling wall, watched civilians scrambling from the targeted building. Women, children. "Negative, Captain. We've got non-combatants in the kill zone. Command has confirmed hostiles only." Jesse's grip tightened on his rifle. Through his scope, he saw a young girl no more than 7, frozen in terror as her mother pulled her toward shelter. "Command is wrong," he replied flatly and switched off his radio. What followed was a direct violation of orders. Jesse broke cover, moved into the exposed area, and helped evacuate the civilians, moments before the airstrike hit. When the dust settled, evidence revealed flawed intelligence. The building had contained families, not fighters. Jesse escaped dishonorable discharge by a hair's breadth, his actions ultimately saving lives. But the official report called it a dangerous breach of protocol. Cody, who had maintained his position as ordered, hadn't spoken in his brother's defense at the inquiry. "You abandoned your post," Cody had said afterward, fury warring with disappointment in his eyes. "You abandoned the mission. You abandoned me." Jesse's response had been equally sharp. "I saved innocent lives while you hid behind orders. Dad would have done the same thing." The mention of their father drove a wedge between them. Back in Ennis Hank, Callahan sat on his porch, showing 14-year-old Billy Johnson how to sand down a wooden eagle. Steady strokes. "Billy," he instructed, his voice raspy, "let the grain tell you which way to move." Billy nodded earnestly. The boy had started coming around after his father, a Marine, died in a training accident. Hank recognized the lost look in his eyes, the same one he'd seen in the mirror after coming home. "Mr. Callahan," Billy asked, "did you really get a silver star?" Hank's hands stilled momentarily. "Who told you that?" "My mom said you were a hero, said you saved a bunch of guys." Hank resumed his work carefully, shaping the eagle's wing. "Real heroes don't come home." Billy remembered that. Later that afternoon, as Billy rode his bike home, Hank collapsed while bringing in firewood. The neighbor called an ambulance, despite his protests. At the hospital, the diagnosis was expected and devastating. Lung cancer. "With treatment, your prognosis could be quite good," the doctor explained, flipping through his chart. "Though I'm concerned about how long you've been ignoring the symptoms." Hank nodded absently, thinking not of his health, but of his sons. The last letters he'd sent them had been returned unopened. They were focused on their careers, on proving themselves. His illness would only be a distraction. "I'll think about it," he told the doctor. Jesse stood at attention as the general pinned the Meritorious Service Medal to his chest. The ceremony was small, unlike the public recognition Cody had received. "Your intelligence work saved American lives, Lieutenant," the general said, though the specifics remained classified. Jesse nodded, feeling strangely hollow. The medal should have meant something would have if his father or brother had been there. That night, he stared at the blank email he'd started to his father a dozen times. News of this achievement felt empty without someone to share it with. Meanwhile, Cody stood on a stage at the Pentagon receiving the Distinguished Service Cross from the Joint Chiefs, the epitome of military bearing. As the ceremony concluded, Cody found himself searching the crowd, half expecting to see his father's proud face or his brother's familiar smile. The absence left an ache. Neither twin knew that across the country, Hank Callahan sat alone in his trailer, recording separate video messages for each of them. His frame was thinner, his shoulders slightly hunched. "Cody," he said to the camera, his voice steady despite the effort. "You were always the careful one, planning everything." He paused, fighting back a cough. "I'm proud of the man you've become. But remember, there's a difference between following orders and following your conscience." Later, he recorded a message for Jesse. "Jesse, you came into this world raising hell, and I suspect you'll leave it the same way." He smiled. "Your heart always leads you, son. It's your strength, but it can be your weakness. Learn to balance that fire with your brother's ice. You're stronger together than apart." He considered telling them about the medals, about his illness. In the end, he decided against it. Some truths were burdens they didn't need to carry. Instead, he told them a story he'd never shared about his Silver Star mission, about disobeying orders to save his unit, about how the Army had quietly covered it up because the mission had succeeded. "So you see, boys," he concluded, his voice growing hoarse, "sometimes the bravest thing a soldier can do isn't charging into battle. Sometimes it's walking away." Elijah slumped back in his chair, exhausted. On the table, his medication largely untaken. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, covering Ennis in a blanket of white. Hank watched through the window, remembering how the twins used to build snow forts, working in tandem, without a word. "You boys were always stronger together," he whispered to the empty room. In their separate corners of the world, Cody and Jesse Callahan stood at attention, wearing identical medals on different uniforms, neither aware that the greatest honor their father had earned now sat in a pawnshop drawer, sacrificed for their future. "All right, let's continue the story of the Callahan twins." The government-issued laptop hummed softly in Jesse's cramped apartment. 3 Aura, 3 a.m., and sleep was a distant memory. Jesse rubbed his tired eyes, the harsh blue light, the only illumination. What started as routine intelligence analysis had spiraled into something far darker. "Project Black Bear," he whispered, staring at the encrypted file that had consumed weeks of his life. The name kept popping up in connection with North Star Security, a defense contractor with disturbingly close ties to several classified operations. Jesse's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Digging deeper could end his career, or worse, but the mission's timeline was a constant nagging itch in his mind. The dates aligned with his father's final deployment, the one he refused to discuss. With a deep breath, he initiated the decryption sequence. The screen flashed code, scrolling as security protocols crumbled. A folder appeared containing heavily redacted mission reports. "Holy," Jesse breathed. Scanning the first document. Photos of a devastated village, coordinates in Chad. A list of operatives including Callahan H. His father's name stared back at him. Dawn painted the Washington sky when Jesse finally stepped away from the computer. The pieces didn't fit yet, but one thing was crystal clear. Project Black Bear wasn't just controversial, it violated international law, and someone had gone to extreme lengths to bury it. He needed to talk to someone who understood someone who could access Pentagon records without raising alarms. He needed Cody. Cody's Arlington apartment was pristine, everything meticulously organized, a world away from Jesse's chaotic space. The phone vibrated on his nightstand, displaying Jesse's number. 4 years of silence, and now a call at 7 a.m. Against his better judgment, he answered, "This is Captain Callahan." "Cody, it's me. I need to talk to you. It's about Dad." Cody stiffened. "Is he okay?" I think he's fine. I mean, this isn't about his health, it's about his service project, Black Bear. Does that name mean anything to you? A long pause. Jesse, this isn't a secure line, and whatever you think you found, leave it alone. You're chasing ghosts. It will cost you everything. Or part of it. Dad's unit was involved in something big, something they covered up. North Star security is connected to it, and now they're getting billion-dollar contracts from the DoD. Leave it alone, Jesse, Cody repeated, his voice hardening. You're chasing classified ghosts. Oh. Like you care, Jesse snapped. You made it pretty clear where your loyalty lies, and it's not with family. The line went dead. Cody sat motionless, uniform half assembled. Jesse was digging into something dangerous. Was it because he cared about their father, or just another example of his brother's disregard for authority? Hank's trailer seemed smaller now. Jesse thought, pulling into the snow-dusted driveway. The paint was peeling, the porch steps sagging. How long had it been since his last visit? 3 years. Guilt gnawed at him as he knocked. No answer. He knocked louder. Finally, shuffling footsteps approached. The door creaked open to reveal his father. Jesse's breath hitched. Hank had always been a force of nature, strong and unyielding. The man before him was gaunt, his shoulders stooped, his breathing labored. Jesse, surprise and joy flooded Hank's weathered face. Son, this is unexpected. They embraced awkwardly, unsure how to bridge the chasm of time and distance. Come in, Hank gestured, leading him inside. What brings you home? Leave. Something like that, Jesse replied, his gaze drawn to the empty squares on the wall where the medals used to hang. Dad, where are your medals? A shadow crossed Hank's face. Had them cleaned, they're put away. A practiced lie. Want some coffee? Just made a pot. Jesse accepted the mug, using the moment to study his father. The wheezing breath, the way he favored his left side, the pill bottles on the counter. You're sick, Jesse stated flatly. Just getting old, Hank waved it off. Nothing to worry about. Dad, I said it's nothing. Jesse interrupted, his tone firm. Now, what's really bringing you home after all this time? Must be important. Jesse hesitated, then pulled out a folder containing printouts from the files. Project Black Bear. You were there, weren't you? In Chad. Hank's cup froze midair, his eyes locked on Jesse's, suddenly sharp and alert. Where did you get this? It doesn't matter. What matters is what happened there. The reports are heavily redacted, but I can read between the lines. Something went wrong, didn't it? Something bad enough that they're still covering it up after all these years. Hank carefully set down his cup, his voice dropping. Some truths protect lives, Jesse. Some stones are better left unturned. That's not good enough. I'm connected to this through you. I need to know what happened. No, you don't, Hank said firmly. What you need to do is drop this now. A coughing fit seized him. Jesse moved to help, but Hank waved him away, pulling out his handkerchief. When he caught his breath, his voice was ragged. Promise me you'll let this go. Looking into his father's eyes, Jesse couldn't make that promise. Instead, he changed the subject, turning to lighter memories, but his mind remained fixed on the mystery, deepened by his father's reaction. As Jesse drove away that evening, he didn't notice Billy Johnson watching from the neighbor's yard, or how Billy slipped into Hank's trailer after he left. Mr. Callahan, Billy called, closing the door. It's me. He found Hank staring out the kitchen window, lost in thought. Billy, Hank acknowledged, forcing a tired smile. You just missed my son, Jesse. I saw him, Billy confirmed, setting his backpack on the counter. He looks like you in the photo. I mean... Hank raised an eyebrow. What photo? Billy hesitated, then pulled out a small frame. Inside a newspaper clipping showed a younger Hank in uniform, receiving his silver star. Where did you get that? Hank asked softly. Library archives, Billy said proudly. Did a school project on local veterans? He paused. Also, I found something else. His hand disappeared into the backpack again, emerging with a medal, the Bronze Star Hank had pawned. Hank stared momentarily speechless. Saw it at Big Sky Pond when I was looking for a birthday gift for my mom, Billy explained. Old Jeb said it belonged to you. I saved up my allowance, thought you should have it back. Hank took the medal with trembling fingers. Billy, I can't accept this. You earned it, the boy said simply. Hank looked from the medal to the earnest young face, wondering what he'd done to deserve such loyalty. Thank you, he said, his voice rough. This means more than you know. After Billy left, Hank sat alone, turning the bronze star over in his hands. One medal returned from 5, a small redemption. His thoughts turned to Jesse, to the questions about Project Black Bear, dangerous questions. With a heavy sigh, Hank retrieved a dusty box from the top shelf. Inside were letters, photos, a small notebook, his private record of what had really happened in Chad. Things he'd never told anyone, especially not his sons. If Jesse kept digging, he would be in danger, real danger. Hank needed to decide whether to finally reveal the truth or take it to his grave as planned. In Washington, Cody stood in his dress uniform before the president, rigid with pride as a medal was pinned to his chest. Coincidentally, the same honor his father had received. Captain Callahan represents the finest traditions of service and sacrifice, the president declared. Afterward, a senior DoD official drew Cody aside. Impressive work, Captain. Your father would be proud. Thank you, sir. Strange coincidence, the official continued, swirling his drink. I just heard your brother's been making inquiries about old operations, Project Black Bear specifically. The smile remained fixed, but his voice cooled. That's ancient history and classified. Might want to advise him to be more discreet. Cody's face revealed nothing but alarm bells rang. This wasn't casual. It was a warning. Jesse had touched a nerve, and someone powerful had noticed. I'll speak with him, sir. Later, driving home, Cody's phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Protect your father's legacy or bury it. The threat was clear, but the choice wasn't. For the first time in his career, Cody questioned where his duty truly lay. Jesse's apartment door was ajar when he returned from a run. He drew his sidearm immediately, years of training, kicking in, moving silently through his own home. He found nothing disturbed until his office. The computer was untouched, but taped to the monitor was a photograph. His father's unit in Chad, their faces clearly visible, scrawled across it in red marker. Some secrets stay buried. Jesse's hands shook as he removed the photo. Someone had been in his home, knew what he was investigating, and had access to classified photos he hadn't even seen yet. His phone rang, displaying an unfamiliar number. Jesse Callahan, a woman's voice said. Ava Carter, we need to talk about Hank Callahan and Project Black Bear. Not on the phone tomorrow, National Bison Range near Moyes. Come alone, 1400 hours. The line went dead. Jesse stared, mind racing. Ava Carter. The name tugged at his memory. With renewed determination, he returned to his computer, searching for connections between his father and this mysterious woman. By morning, he had his answer. Ava Carter, now a deputy director at the Department of Defense, had served in his father's unit in Chad. She'd been there during Project Black Bear. All he needed now was her testimony. The vast expanse of the National Bison Range offered a stark, isolated backdrop for their meeting. Jesse spotted her near a weathered fence, overlooking a herd of grazing bison. Ava Carter, a woman in her late 50s with silver streaks in her dark hair, radiated an air of quiet authority. Lieutenant Callahan, she acknowledged, turning to face him. I wasn't sure you'd come. You called me about my father, about Project Black Bear. Why? Ava sighed, her eyes sweeping across the landscape. Because you're asking questions, and that's making powerful people nervous, people who can make problems disappear. Jesse tensed. Are you threatening me? Warning you, she corrected. Hank was my friend, my mentor. He saved my life in more ways than one. She paused, choosing her words carefully. What do you know about Project Black Bear? Not enough, Jesse admitted. I know it was a Black Ops mission in Chad. I know North Star Security was involved. I know my father was there and something went wrong. Something they've covered up for decades. Barnanskas! Ava nodded slowly. Project Black Bear was supposed to be a simple humanitarian mission, providing medical aid to a remote village. Instead, we found... She hesitated, her voice catching. We found a nightmare, a village of test subjects, civilians being used as guinea pigs exposed to experimental toxins without their knowledge or consent. When reports were made, orders came down to sanitize the area and eliminate all evidence, including the villagers. Jesse's breath caught. You mean they ordered us to kill everyone? Women, children. Ava closed her eyes briefly. Leave no trace. Hank refused. Her voice hardened. He organized an evacuation, got those people out against direct orders, and the Army covered it up. North Star Security covered it up. They had too much to lose if the truth came out, so they buried it, made it look like the village was abandoned, and the mission was a success. My father, he took the fall, Jesse asked, his voice strained. Ava looked at him, her expression pained. Elijah. Callahan took the fall for a mistake I made, a tactical error that cost lives. He accepted a quiet discharge to protect me, to protect all of us who followed his lead instead of orders. Jesse absorbed the information, the pieces falling into place. And now North Star is one of the largest defense contractors in the world, with connections at the highest levels of government. Ava confirmed, including senators who were officers back then. People who don't want their past decisions examined. I need proof, Jesse said. Documents, testimony, anything concrete. Ava smiled sadly. I've been gathering evidence for years, waiting for the right moment. She passed him a small flash drive. This contains everything I have. Use it wisely, but be warned. They're not going to sit back and let you expose them. They're willing to do anything to protect their secrets, and that includes silencing anyone who gets in their way. As they parted, neither noticed a figure watching them from a distant ridge, the glint of a telephoto lens catching the sun. 3 days later, Jesse turned on the news to see Ava Carter's face splashed across the screen. The headline sent a chill down his spine. DOD official missing. Car found abandoned. He tried calling her secure line, her personal number. Nothing. The flash drive contained encrypted files he hadn't fully accessed. Without her key and explanation, he was flying blind. His phone rang Cody's number. Relief flooded through him quickly, followed by dread. Jesse, where are you? Cody's voice was tight, urgent. My apartment. Why? What is going on? Don't leave. I'm coming to you. The line went dead. An hour later, Cody arrived in civilian clothes, his face grim. Without a word, he began sweeping Jesse's apartment for surveillance devices, expertly checking places only someone with specialized training would know to look. What the hell is going on, Cody? Jesse demanded when he finished. You've stumbled into something bigger than you realize, Cody said, his voice low. I've been using my Pentagon access to trace internal memos about Project Black Bear. It goes all the way to the top. Cabinet level, Ava Carter is missing. Jesse swallowed hard. She gave me information about Dad, about what really happened. Cody's expression tightened. What did she tell you? Jesse hesitated, still uncertain how much to trust his brother. Dad disobeyed orders to save civilians. He took the fall for someone else's mistake, Ava's. The whole mission was covered up. Cody nodded, unsurprised. I found evidence of falsified reports, doctored satellite imagery. They built an entire fictional version of events. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of agitation. I've been approached. Jesse warned. They're watching you. Us. Who's they? Jesse asked. Black Ops contractors, I don't know exactly, but they have reach inside the military. They gave me a choice. Stop you or be discharged. The brothers stared at each other, the weight of the situation pressing down. Years of distance still hung between them, but beneath it was the unbreakable bond they'd shared since birth. Why are you here, then? Jesse asked finally. Why warn me instead of stopping me? Cody's jaw tightened. Because you're my brother. And because he hesitated. Because I think you're right, miles away in Ennis Hank. Callahan sat on his back porch with Billy Johnson. Their current project, an intricately carved bald eagle nearly finished. Mr. Callahan, Billy ventured cautiously. Can I ask you something? Shoot, Billy. Hank replied, focused on sanding the eagle's wing to a perfect smoothness. Why don't you ever talk about how you got your medals? My dad used to tell stories about his service all the time. Hank's hand stilled. After a long pause, he sighed. Because the story they tell isn't always the whole truth, Billy. And sometimes the whole truth doesn't fit on a citation. I don't understand. Hank sat down, laid aside his tools, and looked the boy in the eye. The truest things I ever did in the service never earned me any medals, and some of the medals I received. He trailed off, shaking his head. Let's just say the real heroes don't always get recognized, and not everyone wearing a medal earned it the way you'd think Billy considered this. Turning the eagle in his hands. Is that why you don't have them displayed anymore? Because they remind you of bad things? Hank smiled, a faint flicker of light in his eyes. Something like that. A coughing fit seized him worse than before. When it subsided, he found Billy staring in alarm. You should see a doctor, the boy said firmly. I have, Hank admitted, too exhausted to maintain the pretense. Not much they can do now except make me comfortable. Billy's eyes widened. You're dying. We're all dying. Billy, I'm just doing it on a faster schedule than I'd hoped. Hank squeezed the boy's shoulder. Don't look so scared. I've made my peace with it. Does Cody know? Does Jesse? Hank shook his head. They've got their own battles to fight. Don't need to be worrying about their old man. Later, after Billy had gone home, Hank sat alone, the nearly finished eagle in his hands. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for his phone and recorded another message for his sons, more urgent, more honest than before. Boys. He began, his voice raspier than ever. There's something you need to know about Project Black Bear, about what really happened there. He paused, gathering his strength. I've kept secrets to protect people, but now I think the truth might protect you more. He spoke for nearly an hour, laying bare everything he knew. When he finished, exhaustion overwhelmed him, and he slipped into sleep right there on the porch, the phone clutched in his hand. Billy, who had forgotten his backpack and returned to retrieve it, found him there. Carefully, he took the phone and placed it on the table, then covered Hank with a blanket. Before leaving, he noticed the video recording app still open. Hesitating only briefly, he pressed play and listened to Hank's confession. By the time the recording ended, Billy's face was set with determination. He knew what he had to do. In Jesse's apartment, the brothers had reached an uneasy alliance. I need access to a secured government database, Jesse explained, showing Cody the encrypted files from Ava. Without the decryption keys, this is useless. Cody paced the small room. That's impossible. Those systems are air-gapped, protected by biometric security. Even with my clearance, I can get in, Jesse interrupted. I've been developing a backdoor for months, but I need physical access and a distraction. Cody stared at his brother. That's treason, Jesse. Is it? Or is covering up war crimes the real treason? Jesse challenged. These files could prove what happened, vindicate Dad, expose North Star, maybe even help us find Ava before something worse happens to her. Silence fell between them. If we do this, Cody said finally, we do it my way. Controlled, precise. No room for your usual improvisation. Jesse suppressed a smile. Yes, sir, Captain. The next 48 hours were a blur of preparation. Cody's security clearance and Jesse's hacking expertise combined to create a plan to access the classified databases where the full Project Black Bear files were stored. The morning they were to execute their plan, Cody received a text from an unknown number. Back down now or join your brother in disgrace. Final warning. He deleted it without showing Jesse. Some burdens didn't need sharing. The hack itself was surprisingly anticlimactic. Cody's credentials got them into the facility, and Jesse's software pierced through layers of security, extracting the complete Project Black Bear files. They were out in 20 minutes, leaving no trace. Back in the safety of Jesse's apartment, they pored over the documents. The truth was even more horrifying than they had imagined. The village had been deliberately exposed to experimental biological agents. When the test went wrong, North Star had ordered the elimination of all evidence, including the villagers. He saved those people, Cody whispered, staring at a photograph of his father helping terrified children onto a helicopter. He defied direct orders to do the right thing, and they punished him for it. They threatened to deny his son's applications to any service academy if he spoke out. Jesse realized suddenly, his face paling. The brothers sat in stunned silence, absorbing the magnitude of their father's sacrifice, not just his career, but his legacy, his reputation, all to protect them. Their contemplation was interrupted by Jesse's phone. The caller ID read Ennis General Hospital. "Jesse Callahan speaking," he answered, a knot forming in his stomach. "Mr. Callahan, this is Nurse Winters. I'm calling about your father, Hank Callahan. He's been admitted in critical condition. The doctors are asking for family to come as soon as possible." Jesse's face drained. He relayed the message to Cody. Their father was dying, and they were hundreds of miles away, with evidence that could either vindicate him or put them all in danger. "We need to go to him," Cody said immediately. "Everything else can wait." "What about the files exposing the truth?" Jesse protested. "This may be our only chance." Cody gripped his brother's shoulder. "Dad earned his medals by following orders. Then he earned his true honor by breaking one for the right reasons." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "What do you think he'd want us to do right now?" Jesse nodded slowly, understanding. They would go to their father, but first he made one quick call to a military journalist he trusted implicitly. "I have a story you need to hear," he said, "and evidence to back it up, but I need to see my father first." As they packed, unaware that in Ennis, Billy Johnson was already setting events in motion, uploading Hank's confession to a private server, sending the access link to every media outlet in the country. The storm was about to break with their father at its heart. The antiseptic smell of the hospital hit Cody and Jesse as they rushed inside. Fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows on their faces as they approached the information desk. "We're here for Hank Callahan," Cody said, his military bearing evident. "We're his sons." The nurse looked up, recognition flickering in her eyes. "Third floor, ICU room, 307. They found Dr. Reynolds outside their father's room reviewing charts. The Callahan family," he asked, extending his hand. "I've been treating your father for several months." "Months?" Jesse echoed, exchanging a look with Cody. "How long has he been sick?" Dr. Reynolds hesitated. "Your father was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer approximately 8 months ago. He responded well initially, but recently stopped attending his appointments. The cancer has progressed to stage 4, metastasized." "I'm sorry." Cody's face remained impassive, but his hands clenched. "Prognosis. Days, maybe weeks," Dr. Reynolds said gently. The twins stood in silence. Their father had been dying, and they hadn't known. "Can we see him?" Jesse asked, his voice rough. Dr. Reynolds nodded. "He's been drifting in and out. Don't expect too much." Hank looked small in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines. His once powerful frame had withered, his dark skin ashen. An oxygen mask covered his face. "Dad," Cody said softly, approaching the bed with Jesse. Hank's eyes shifted towards them, widening. With visible effort, he lifted a trembling hand to remove the mask. "My boys, you came." Jesse took his father's hand, shocked by its weightlessness. "Why didn't you tell us you were sick?" A ghost of a smile crossed Hank's lips. "You had your own battles." Cody moved to the other side of the bed, struggling to maintain his composure. "We know about Project Black Bear, Dad. We know what you did, what they made you do." Hank's eyes closed. When they opened, they were clearer, more focused. "You shouldn't have dug into that. It's dangerous." "We had to know the truth," Jesse insisted. "You saved those people. You disobeyed orders because it was the right thing to do. And you took the fall for Ava Carter's mistake," Cody added. Hank's gaze shifted between them. "How did you—" "Oh, Ava, what would you like me to do from here?" Jesse. "Save yourself. I'm done." Hank paused before beginning to cough. The alarms of monitors began blaring. Jesse was about to grab a nurse before his dad firmly squeezed his hand, stopping him. A nurse rushed in, concerned. "You need to leave," she told the twins firmly. "He needs rest." They retreated to the hallway, shaken. "We need to talk," Cody said, leading Jesse to a quiet corner of the waiting room. For the first time in years, the twins had a real conversation, honest, raw, and painful. They spoke of missed opportunities, misunderstandings, the chasm that had grown between them. "I should have supported you at the hearing," Cody admitted, his voice low. "You were right to save those civilians, just like Dad was right in Project Black Bear." Jesse shook his head. "And I should have understood your position. Following the chain of command isn't just blindly obeying, it's about trust systems that keep people alive. We were both right in our own ways, and both wrong to let it divide us." Cody nodded, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Dad sacrificed everything for us. His medals, his health, his reputation. He let them paint him as the one who made the mistake to protect Ava and others," Jesse added. A moment of silence, the weight of their father's sacrifice settling over them. "What do we do with the files?" Cody asked finally. "About the truth." Before Jesse could answer, his phone buzzed. "Check the news. It's already happening." Confused? Jesse pulled up a news site. His breath caught. Decorated veteran took fall for military crime. Sons fight to clear name. "What the hell?" he murmured, showing Cody the screen. The story was breaking across multiple networks. Project Black Bear exposed complete with portions of Hank's confession. "We didn't release anything," Cody whispered. "How was this possible?" The answer came minutes later. Billy slipped into the waiting room, his young face a mixture of defiance and concern. Is Mr. Callahan okay?" "Billy." Cody recognized the boy from photos. "What are you doing here?" "I had to come," Billy said simply. "I gave his story to the right people." He pulled out his phone, showing them the video of Hank's confession. "He recorded this. I found him passed out with the phone open. I sent it to the reporters." The twins stared, shocked. "You leaked this?" Jesse asked. Billy straightened his shoulders. "Mr. Callahan deserves the truth to be told. He's a hero." Before they could respond, a nurse appeared. "He's asking for you, all of you." They returned to find Hank awake and more alert. His eyes found Billy immediately. "You shouldn't be here, Billy. School night." Billy approached the bed hesitantly. "I had to make sure you were okay." "Mr. Callahan." A ghost of a smile touched Hank's lips. "Stubborn, like my boys." His gaze shifted to his sons. "The story's out, isn't it? I can see it on your faces." Cody nodded, breaking across all networks. "Billy sent your confession to the press." Hank's eyes widened slightly as he looked at the boy. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. "Good boy." Billy's face lit up. "Dad." Jesse began carefully. "With your story, public things will get complicated. The Pentagon North Star, they'll deny everything." "Let them," Hank said suddenly, looking stronger. "Truth's like water. Pressed down in one place, it rises in another." As if on cue, Jesse's phone rang. The military journalist he'd contacted. "Jesse, your father's story is exploding online," the journalist said. "I've received calls from 3 different Pentagon officials demanding a retraction. But there's something you should know. Ava Carter contacted me. She's alive and hiding and recorded her own testimony. She has proof documents, photos, even DNA samples from victims." The room fell silent. "2 other members of your father's unit reached out willing to testify," the journalist continued. Hank closed his eyes, tears tracking down his face. "After all these years," he whispered. Outside, something remarkable was happening. Veterans began arriving, in ones and twos then by the dozens. They gathered in the parking lot, many in uniform holding candles and American flags. Word spread through veteran networks. Hank Callahan, who saved innocent lives, sacrificing his career to protect others, was dying. Social media exploded. Honor Hank Match medals for truth, hashed Black Bear Truth. In Washington, North Star issued a swift denial, calling the allegations false and defamatory. The Pentagon released a statement saying the matter was under review. Then Ava Carter's testimony leaked online, detailed specific devastating. The public response was overwhelming. Senator William Tate, now chairman of the Armed Services Committee, was ambushed by reporters. "These allegations are absurd," he declared, his face flushed. But hours later, an old photograph surfaced, a young Lieutenant Colonel Tate with Hank and other unit members just before the Project Black Bear mission. The senator's denials rang hollow. Back in Ennis, General Hank rested occasionally, drifting into consciousness. During one such moment, he found both his sons sitting by his bed in full dress uniforms. "What's this?" he asked, barely a whisper. "Thought you might like to see us together again," Cody said, adjusting the medals on his chest. Jesse leaned closer. "The world knows the truth now, Dad. They know what you did, what you sacrificed." A weak smile crossed Hank's face. "Worth it for you boys." His breathing became labored, his eyes struggling to stay open. "Always worth it." The monitors began beeping erratically. Hank's body tensed, then went limp as his eyes rolled back. Medical staff rushed in, pushing the brothers aside frantically, trying to stabilize him. In the hallway, Cody paced. Jesse leaned against the wall, head in his hands. Billy sat nearby, his face pale. "He can't die now," Jesse said, his voice breaking. "Not when we're so close to clearing his name." Cody stopped pacing, placing a hand on his brother's shoulder. "We're not done." Jesse. Outside, the crowd had grown a living memorial to a man most had never met. On the third morning, as Jesse dozed in the uncomfortable chair by his father's bed, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Jesse Callahan speaking," he answered, stepping into the hallway. "Lieutenant Callahan, this is Margaret Winters, Department of Justice." Her voice was crisp, professional. "You've been summoned to appear before a federal grand jury regarding the unauthorized release of classified information pertaining to Operation Black Bear." Jesse's grip tightened. "You're charging me for exposing war crimes." "The hearing is next Monday at 9 a.m. Your presence is required by law." She paused. The FBI has secured a warrant to search your residence and devices." The line went dead. Jesse stood frozen. He expected backlash, but not this, not now. They were making an example of him. He told Cody, his brother's face darkening. "They're desperate, a warning shot trying to silence others." "I need a lawyer," Jesse said grimly, as if fate had been listening. A young woman approached them later in the cafeteria, early 30s, fierce eyes, determined jawline. "Lieutenant Callahan, Captain Callahan, I'm Sarah Nichols." She handed them business cards. "Attorney with the Military Justice Advocacy Project." Jesse glanced at the card. "How did you find us?" "My father served under Hank Callahan," she said simply. "Master Sergeant James Nichols. He died on that mission, the one your father tried to save people from." Her voice was steady, but her eyes flashed. "I've waited years for this story. I want to represent you, Lieutenant Callahan pro bono. This case isn't just about you or your father anymore. It's about every soldier who's chosen between orders and conscience." The brothers exchanged glances. "I don't have money for a high-profile defense," Jesse admitted. Sarah shook her head. "This case isn't about you or your father anymore. It's about every soldier who's ever had to choose between orders and conscience, and about ensuring the wrongs that befell your father and others are never repeated." Outside the hospital, the movement continued, Billy too young to fully grasp the legal intricacies, but old enough to recognize injustice, had become a spokesperson for the younger generation. A video of him speaking passionately outside the courthouse went viral. "If Hank Callahan was a criminal, then I don't want to be a good citizen. I want to be whatever he is, a person who does what's right no matter the cost." The video shared millions of times. He was the face of a movement demanding accountability. Meanwhile, Cody faced his own crucible. Summoned to the Pentagon, he found himself in a conference room with 3 generals and the Secretary of Defense. "Captain Callahan," the secretary began, "you've served with distinction. Your record is impeccable, which makes this disappointing." Cody stood at attention, saying nothing. "We're prepared to overlook your involvement in this misunderstanding," the secretary continued. "There's a promotion to major being processed for you. All we ask is that you publicly distance yourself from your brother's actions. Betray Jesse or face consequences." Cody took a breath. "With all due respect, Mr. Secretary, my father taught me that rank means nothing without honor." He removed his captain's bars and placed them on the table. "If supporting my brother in the truth costs me my career, it's a price I'm willing to pay." The room fell silent. The oldest general, a man with silver hair and battle-worn eyes, spoke quietly. "You sound just like Hank." Cody was escorted from the building, his clearance revoked, but walking down the Pentagon steps he felt for the first time in years free. In Ennis, an unexpected ally emerged. Retired General Michael Lawson arrived at the hospital unannounced. Lawson served as Hank's commanding officer briefly before Project Black Bear. Now he confessed he'd held onto records, names, dates, conversations from his service. He'd felt complicit in the injustice. Now inspired by Hank and his sons, he was determined to make amends. That evening, something remarkable happened. Hank opened his eyes, fully conscious. "My boys," he whispered. Together, the news of the trial was relayed to him, along with the immense outpouring of public support. A week later, Jesse's trial began. Protesters and supporters surrounded the courthouse. The media presence was unprecedented for Ennis. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Sarah dismantled the government's case. When Ava Carter took the stand, her testimony silenced the room. "I watched Hank Callahan save 27 civilians that day," she stated, her voice unwavering. When he received the order to eliminate all witnesses, he looked the commander in the eye and said, "Then you'll have to shoot me first." On the 3rd day, Cody took the stand in full dress uniform, the last time he would wear it. "Captain Callahan, can you tell the court about the documents you discovered in the Pentagon archives?" Cody leaned into the microphone. "I found memos confirming Project Black Bear was deliberately covered up. That North Star pressured the DoD to create a false narrative, and that my father and his unit were threatened if they spoke." "How did you obtain these documents?" the prosecutor demanded. "Through my security clearance as a Pentagon liaison," Cody answered calmly. "A clearance you no longer possess because you violated your oath." Cody met his gaze steadily. "I violated no oath. I swore to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Covering up war crimes violates the Constitution." The courtroom erupted, forcing the judge to call for order. By the final day, the mood had shifted dramatically. The jury deliberated less than 3 hours. 3 hours before delivering their verdict. "Not guilty on all charges." The judge in Entente, a Vietnam vet, added an extraordinary statement after dismissing the jury. "This court recommends the DoD launch a full investigation into Project Black Bear and the cover-up. We recommend Hank Callahan be recognized for his moral courage." Outside, the crowd erupted. Veterans surged forward, forming an honor guard as the brothers made their way to their car. "What now?" Jesse asked. Cody's face was thoughtful. "Now we make sure Dad knows it was worth it."